I'm more of a relationship manager than I am a property manager. People really overcomplicate or really make the property management part of it way more challenging than it needs to be, and that's because the relationship is not there. It's not set up correctly. And so a lot of landlords, you'll see a lot of PMs again, because they were burned or whatever, are going, I'm just waiting for this person to burn me. And so you kind of get into this critical parent, rebellious child relationship. And they never feel appreciated. Oh, they're going, oh, they're just, and it's that mindset that I think is where and you see this a lot in the individual landlord, accidental landlord, where
Welcome to the Truthers Podcast, where we explore the intersection of real estate and the cutting edge technology. I'm your host, Marcus Tejada, and today we're diving into a truly unique approach to property management. Now, my guest is Donovan Reese, a veteran in property management space with a career spanning over 2 decades. Donovan is now leading MyRentDoor, a company that challenges traditional models by focusing on kindness, emotional intelligence, and a bold zero vacancy mission. We're going to uncover how Donovan and his team manages hundreds of doors across 6 states without a single employee on the ground, and why their innovative relation-first strategy is setting a new standard for institutional and fund-level property management. Get ready to hear about a business model that truly aims for everyone to win together. Let's jump in. How you doing, Donovan?
good, you.
I'm doing well. Now, Donovan, you said, you've seen the property management industry evolve over decades. What were some of the most significant frustrations or inefficiencies you observed in traditional property management that ultimately led you to found MyRentDoor with a focus on kindness, empathy, and emotional intelligence?
So there's a lot there. So when I started in property management in the 2000s, right? I mean, even driving to listing appointments, you didn't have maps on your phone. So I'd have to, print, Yahoo Maps off back in the day or whatever, and print contracts and sign them on the back of my car at the Starbucks at the corner. And so there's been a lot of advancements really in technology, from, basic Apple Maps or Google Maps to, DocuSigns or, e-signature platforms. It's definitely, come a long ways there. And I think the industry has evolved a lot. Over the years too. So I helped set up the first institutional property management platform for, the institutional. They came in 2010. They all started here in Phoenix buying, and help with that. And, been very involved, in the industry there, for, 15 years now. And so I think especially you're seeing it in the institutional side, where they're really starting to, look at, vacancy and retention metrics, a lot more than they used to do when I got into this. And we started that, like, there was no clients that were really concerned at all about retention. They're going, hey, well, if they want to leave, we'll just find somebody else. And so now they're being driven by the math and the numbers, right? And everything's gotten more challenging as there's been a lot more competition in the space. Prices have gone up of homes, costs of everything have gone up. And so now they're being forced to, look at all of the corners here and figure out where they can try to save some money, or you keep their numbers up there. So they're starting to care about the renters as well, and really keep that vacancy low, the retention high. So I think you're seeing a lot where they're starting to really understand, that the renter is, actually a valued customer, and you have to, to treat them well, because, they have a lot of options right now. Rent prices right now are compressing a little bit. You're typically not going to find a new renter at the same price you're at now if you're at market rates, and then you're factoring in, vacancies and turn costs and leasing fees and whatnot. So it's starting to get there. And so I'm excited for that. I'd like to see, as the industry as a whole, I'd like to see the individual landlords start to view their investments that same way. You still see a lot of challenges around that, but I think it's a good thing for the industry. And it's, as you mentioned in the opening here, kind of one of the challenges I put on myself when I got back into this space. Let's see if you could do it. I figured if you could run a property management company, on kindness, empathy, emotional intelligence, and make it profitable, I feel like it'd be a pretty good case study for any industry because, as we know, there definitely can be a very very challenging industry to be in.
Yeah, that is true. So, why do you think that the institutional owners, compared to the individual property owners, are still not aligned as far as the vacancy rate and everything?
I think it just comes two things probably that jump out. One is they treat it as a business, right? I mean, the institutions, it's numbers, right? And if the numbers and the finances tell them that they'll be more successful if they treat their renters better, they're going to do that. So are they doing it for the right reasons? Uh, but they are doing it, and then being that it's a business, it's not as it's emotional, where you see, right, we got the secondary rise of the accidental landlord happening right now. And we were at my last company we founded, we were at the front edge of that accidental unintentional landlord. I think we actually coined the term unintentional or accidental landlord, and that's their house, right? They either lived in it, they've got an emotional attachment to, they raised their kids there, or, they inherited grandma's house. And so it's a lot of times more emotionally led than just math, And so
Hmm.
I think it's another thing you see a lot. And I had this conversation this morning, kind of on a different topic, but the same thing with you're just not having that experience. And I was talking about a flipper that I do some business with, and he's always trying to grind everybody down and get everything for free. And, everybody works for free but him, so he can make the most. And I'm like, you just haven't been around long enough, right? That works fine, right? If you're doing one flip in your career, but if you're trying to do multiple ones, it's just a bad way to do business because you're just burning relationships all the time and having to start over. And there's a lot of challenges around vetting and finding good contractors. And I think that's kind of the same thing for some of these either accidental or just newbie investors, where they whatever watching some of these TV programs, and of course they're all sensationalized, but where they're thinking, well, this is the way I need to act, right? Everyone's out to screw everybody, and so I better make sure that I'm not the one getting screwed. Where you do enough of these, you spend enough time in the space, and you realize that it's just business, but you still have relationships and things that you have to maintain. So, I think that's where the emotional intelligence part comes in a little bit as well. I used to hate when I was in my early 20s and people would say, "Oh, it is what it is," and I'm like, "No, it's not." But now I'm at the point in my life where sometimes you're like, is what it is, and you just
It is
you
what it
can't get
is.
emotional, you can't take it home and kick the dog or lose sleep over it. It's just going, okay, well, how do we fix it, and let's get back into it. So just like anything though, until you get some of those scars and battle wounds and come out the other side of it, you just don't really understand and appreciate the business. And I'm somebody who looks for the good and believes that people are inherently good people. And we've built our relationships and our structures around that with our renters, but unfortunately not all people are good people, and sometimes you just have to go, well, they're not a good person, but I'm not gonna get bitter about it and start going to the other extreme. I still want to, support, good people winning, and sometimes you just get burned.
Yeah, it's true. Now let's talk about your vacancy mission. So I know many property owners struggle with the financial drain of high vacancy and rates and constant tenant turnovers. Now your vacancy mission is really bold in reality. And can you explain how this mission directly addresses the pain points, lost revenue, and operational headache for property owners, and what tangible impact it has had on its bottom line?
Yeah, well, I came to the realization that while we get hung up as investors or owners of PM companies or whatnot, funds of looking at, well, how do I cut costs of how do I reduce my insurance costs, or I as an owner of a property management company get beat up on PM fees all the time. And like I said earlier, initially nobody cared about vacancy. It was just a cost of doing business that they either didn't think they could affect or didn't care to. And I joke, everyone's smart when money's free. now that, money is not free. Like people have to really, button down everything. So, really when you look at, all of your expenses and factor in, loss of revenue on, compounding that, you're, challenge. I mean, the biggest loss of profitability is vacancy. And so there's obviously there's the vacancy itself. There's the turn cost around that. There's a leasing fee, so it really compounds, right? You lose 1 month of rent, you've lost, 8.5% of your potential revenue for the entire year there, and then, of course, start, factoring on all the other fees on top of that, it's really hard to be, profitable in this business without somebody else paying your mortgage. And again, that's what kind of hit earlier. People are really trying to attack that. There's a lot of providers, tech maintenance companies out there that are, trying to do their best to tackle vacancy or retention and challenges around, maintenance. And that's certainly a challenge around that. You see a lot of renters that do leave because things aren't being addressed. But that's deeper than maintenance, and we can talk about that. And then there's things on the other side of, resident benefit packages, and that's a soapbox I get on fairly regularly. I don't find them mostly to be beneficial to residents, and they're not necessarily sold that way. It's a revenue center for the PM. Again, start looking at it. So how do you solve that? Right.
Yeah.
Life happens for everybody, right? And so it's something you're going to deal with, eventually. But the goal is to get a good renter in there. I used to joke in my last company that, renters were a dime a dozen, but they were actually cheaper than that. And then I had some experiences where, I really realized the true value of good renters. I was selling turnkey rental properties after I left the first management company, and it wasn't until I started talking about how great my renters were and how you can meet them, and they know I'm selling the house, that I went from not being able to sell it to a full price offer with, I think, 5 or 6 backup offers in 24 hours. So that
Mhm.
really made me change the perspective I have on renters. So that's why I say too, you'll hear me saying everywhere all the time that, I'm more of a relationship manager than I am a property manager. People really overcomplicate or really make the property management part of it way more challenging than it needs to be. And that's because in my opinion, the relationship is not there. It's not set up correctly. And so a lot of landlords, you'll see a lot of PMs, again, because they were burned or whatever, are going, I'm just waiting for this person to burn me. And so you kind of get into this critical parent, rebellious child relationship. And they never feel appreciated. They're going, oh, they're just renters. And it's that mindset that I think is where you see this a lot in the individual landlord, accidental landlord, where
Mhm.
they kind of have that, and I'm hoping that that evolves and changes, because I say, doesn't matter, if you're a renter or an owner of a property, you're still paying a cost of living expense to someone. You're either paying it to the landlord or to the bank directly. So you're not a better person because you bought a house. It doesn't change who you are as a person. If you're a terrible human being as a renter, you're going to be a terrible human being when you own a house, right? So there's no sort of, baptism that comes out of that, and you come out the other side as, a better person. So we really look at the person first. You're a person first, and then you're, a renter second, and, and here. So, um, we really look for good people. We put good product on the market, and then we intentionally attract, really good renters. And we tell them all the time we appreciate them. We set the relationship up. We have, we call it kind of an upfront contract with our renter, and we call them renter partners. Maybe I should clarify that quickly too, because
Okay.
it's not the typical perspective, or historical has been, especially we'll throw a PM in there too. You've got, three parties sitting at three different sides of the table, and you kind of have this adversarial relationship. But again, through some of my experiences, where you realize, like, again, where good renters are worth their weight in gold. If you think about what a renter wants, they want a good house, they want it well maintained, they want to stay there for as long as the house suits their needs. As a landlord, what do you want? You want a good renter who takes care of the house and stays there for as long as the house suits their needs. needs. So, when you take the emotional and everything out of it, we all want the exact same thing. Right. And so there's
That's true.
absolutely no reason we should be sitting on opposite sides of this 10,000 pound rock trying to push it. So we invite them to, to this side of the table and we go, hey, we're partners in this. And ultimately, the goal of everyone here is to make sure we protect the asset. Right. So if the asset's not protected, maintained, then nobody's winning. So, for example, going back to even, maintenance, right? And I talked to a lot of like, even national maintenance providers and I felt the same way before I had this epiphany where you're like, oh, maintenance, and I used to joke that renters would, that their responsibility, they felt their responsibility ended as soon as they made the maintenance request. And now you're trying to get vendors coordinated and they're making it very challenging and going back and forth and all of this. And so um, for us, like we don't beat up our renters when they call us for maintenance. We go, hey, thank you for calling us. Thank you for letting us know. Let's get it figured out. And we communicate with them. And we make them part of the solution as well. So we don't have, I mean, maintenance comes off, but we don't have the phantom maintenance issues. They're not, very rarely are they contentious, because we communicate, we tell them we appreciate it, and when we bring on new portfolios, we talk to the renters. Is there anything you need? Anything we can do? And so, really, just treating them. And again, so going back to the upfront contract too is again saying, hey, we're partners. This is what we expect from you. This is what you can expect from us. This is how we expect the relationship to work and how we're going to communicate together. This is what's going to happen if we get off track. And so we can always refer back to that. But we have an objective here of not only finding good renters and keeping them in the house, but it's our responsibility to make sure they've got the resources and they've got everything they need to to be renters and good renters and good people. So we do more than resident benefit packages. We really treat them, and I would say more than anything, people just want to know that they've been heard, like truly heard, right? And so when you can treat people
Mhm.
that way on a level of mutual respect, it's so much easier, right, to do the property management side. So I say if you can manage the relationships between all stakeholders correctly, managing properties is quite simple, right? I mean, it's mechanical at this point. So, it makes our job easier as well as PMs, right? If we're not
Mhm.
constantly fighting or going back and forth and getting dragged into, silly little fights because somebody felt offended or, whatever, we can just get problem, solve problem, move on. And everyone, still happy, and then we're able to, keep people in properties as well. So when you kind of set up that relationship from the very beginning, and then you have to live it. You have to actually walk the talk and not just put cool looking things on your website or core values that go on the wall. You got to live it and then just work through them, right? And so again, like even going into rent collection, right? I mean, we tell our renters like, hey, if you're going to have a problem with paying your rent, call us. We have a ton of relationships and we're constantly adding to our list of those where we've got local charities and nonprofits and government agencies and things that will step up and help with rent. In fact, I right before I got on this, I was on a call with a church here locally that was helping a renter with some paying the rest of their month rent here. Let's say the average American has what, $400 in their emergency savings account, and so the transmission on their car goes out and
So,
right? They got to get to work, so they're going to pay for the transmission to get to work, or they lose the job. And if they lose the job, they can't pay their rent anyways. And so you've got people that are, have been historically really good renters and good partners here. And the last thing you want to do, it's again in nobody's best interest to start the eviction process and kick them out and go, well, they're bad people. Like, again, that gets into the eviction and eviction costs and vacancy and turnover. And
mhm.
right, the only people that win in there are the eviction attorneys. And I like my eviction attorneys, but I'm not trying to put their kids through college. I've got clients that, you know, that I have to look out for. So if you can get ahead of it, and I want to encourage the communication, again, I'm not going to beat you up. I'm not going to judge you for whatever situation you're in with, just let us know, communicate. I would say if there's an issue, let me know. We will help you solve it. if I have to come find you and track you down, I'm not going to be as helpful and happy. So you want to find me before I find you, and
Yeah.
we'll be fine. It's really just managing. And I would say, it's we want people to stay as long as the house suits their needs. If they're able to, buy a house, great. Let us know. We'll help you get, moved out, make sure you get everything done and get your security deposit back. And congratulations, good for you. That's awesome. Or, things happen, right? And that's,
Hmm.
but real quick here, through COVID, I was doing some consulting for organizations to help employee engagement in the workplace. And so doing some research through that, and there's a lot of different studies, but the one that I always quote is it was like 80% of all employees had either recently left a job or were considering leaving a job not because the job no longer suited them, but it's because the relationship with their manager had become untenable. And it really got me thinking, going, I wonder if there's data out there for the landlord tenant relationship, because I found a lot of corolarities between the employer employee relationship and the landlord tenant relationship. And unfortunately, I have not been able to find any actual data on that. But I would guess that if there were data, it would come out probably pretty similar. So when you see, right, if you say 80% of people of renters have either left a home recently or are seriously considering it, not because the home no longer suits their needs, but because the relationship with their property manager or their landlord has become untenable. And that's right. Some renters are just jerks. And that's, part of it. But that's again where this
Hmm.
emotional intelligence thing comes in. So to be able to manage through that, get the relationship set up correctly. Otherwise, I'll make a bold, statement here that might be somewhat controversial, but I would say there's a lot of landlords and property managers out there that cause their own vacancy problems by the way they treat their renters. So it's essentially free to treat people well, right? And to tell them you appreciate
Hmm.
them and to have that. And so if you can do something that costs you $0 that has an exponential payback for you, why would you not do that? It's because we get emotionally involved in the relationships or whatever happens there. So for us, right, you put a good product on the market, you attract good renters, you treat them well, and I tell them all the time if they're a good renter, I'm like, let me know. I want to keep you forever.
Yeah.
Let me know what I can do. And because of that, we do get a lot of renewals and a lot of people stay. So and that's the thing too, right? When you look at, and we do a lot of affordable housing, low income housing stuff too across the whole country. And that's a class of people that are just typically not used to being respected or heard or appreciated, right? And so it's low hanging fruit to treat them well, kind,
Hmm.
authentically, ideally. But if, they're looking at, because they, the devil they know of the typical PM or landlord in that space, right? When we're advertising our vacant listings across the country, we talk about our culture and how we treat our renters and everything, because I want the way we handle our relationships to be a competitive advantage. I want them to go, yeah, the house across the street's maybe a little bit nicer, maybe it's a little bit cheaper, but these people seem like they're going to be really good partners. They're going to be nice and kind and be, a good long-term partnership. And we see that a lot. And we get a lot of people, a lot of renters come from existing renter relationships. When you see your current renters referring their friends and family, that's typically a pretty good indication you're doing something right. So it makes the leasing easier.
Hmm.
So you can get into the weeds on all these different technologies and things, and I love all that kind of stuff too. But for me, that the rest of it's all fun. It's bells and whistles stuff. But if you don't build the foundation correctly, right, you're gonna struggle. And for me, I decided that foundation was, kindness, empathy, and emotional intelligence.
Okay, yeah, I like that. You had a lot to say, and it's all great. Now, it's all great things as far as, I mean, that's true. Relationship, the job situation, relationships. People don't want to move. They hate moving.
That's why I say we as a society don't agree on hardly anything. But I say I
Yeah.
can find one thing we can all agree on, and that's moving sucks.
Yes, yeah.
Nobody likes it.
Nobody likes it. Let's transition. I know when we talk that the traditional model requires boots on the ground. right, staff? But you're scaling your company without boots on the ground across multiple locations. Now, how does my rent door unique relationship management first, logistic management second, property manager third model alleviate these common operational pain points, especially for owners with portfolios in multiple states?
Yeah, so it's been a journey for me. Back at the other company that I was a part of, we were expanding into multiple states. And so I had this epiphany about 12 years ago now. I've been doing this part of, where we had full staffed offices in every market with rent collectors, maintenance coordinators. We had a lot of leasing agents and things. And so I was managing multiple states remotely for me, but I had full operations there. And then I had some turnover and I started going, okay, well, we did a ton of advertising. And so we got a ton of leads and radio calls in and things. And so I started directing all of those calls, for the whole West Coast to my main operation here in Phoenix, and then sending them back out to my leasing agents across the country. And there was definitely some learning challenges. It was some pain points there, and that was, back in the day, VoIP phone systems were still pretty rudimentary. And so there's a lot of like tech challenges around that, which, the technology has evolved so much in the last 10, 12 years that it makes it pretty easy today. But then started going, okay, what, like, if I can do it in lead lead capture and selling, then let's try it in rent collection and maintenance. And so I started centralizing services. We got acquired a majority equity stake by a PE firm in 2016. So we ran, two corporate offices, one in Minneapolis, which is where that company was originally founded, and then here in Phoenix. And so we still had boots on the ground in every market, but we were doing a lot of leasing, right? So we had a lot of leasing agents, but it didn't work exactly how I had envisioned. Once the PE came in, things got challenging to really run that. But I saw that it worked, and that model that you're seeing where a lot of people are doing the centralized services model is based off what I built 12 years ago, even the large institutions. So I love doing stuff that's never been done before. We have a joke here. We do it not because it's easy, but because we think it's going to be easy. So kind of start, trying things out and, seeing what works. When I started this company after my non-compete came up, I was originally just in Phoenix here. And then I got referred a portfolio in Birmingham, Alabama, which the last thing I did for my last company was open up Birmingham, Alabama. So I was pretty familiar with that market. So I did hire like a business development manager there to kind of oversee everything, and then I hired one in Phoenix here as well. It was okay, but it wasn't as effective, and we were still, kind of focused on the unintentional, accidental, small investor where we've, pivoted our model. I don't service that clientele anymore. I do, small to medium size, fund and institutional investors or intentional investors. And so I didn't need somebody on the ground to go to networking events or meeting with realtors or things. And so they both moved on. And at that point, I was like, well, let's see how much we can do without people on the ground. And so we've been very fortunate, having been in this space for a long time. And I do have a business partner in this business. His name's Bill Bump. And Bill and I worked together at the last property management company. And he helped scale nationally. And he's very tech savvy and knows how to build sales systems and tech systems and stuff. So he's been a phenomenal resource. And so we do smart hubs, smart locks, self showings. So we don't need leasing agents to go open doors. We're not picking up individual landlords. So I don't do listing appointments. I do all the business development. I've got a very deep network in this space. And then the rest of it, again, like talking, logistics. So, kind of started going through that. And this last year or so, we've been building that and breaking it and fixing it. We've been through kind of a few different, partners, but we've been able to find really good partners. And it's been interesting on that too, because as we talk to people, we're finding that a lot of these groups are very excited to work with us, really stepping up, and we're able to work with the founders and directly on some of these because they all love our mission, right? The zero vacancy, but the kindness, empathy, and
Mhm.
emotional intelligence. And I'm finding that at first I wasn't too sure how that was gonna go. I was just gonna get laughed at, which I did a little bit, but not totally. It's been great to see. It's been refreshing to see, a lot of the vendors in the space and different partners and, even a lot of the clients that we bring on. They're like, I really love, your mission and how you handle things. And the same way we talked about, with renters and everything is, the same way we treat our vendors and our partners and our clients. And so we've been able to get some really good partners. And the biggest one is, we're been working with them on this transition for almost a year now and just getting that, fully up and running now. But we went to a new property management software, a company called Ravella, which for anybody out there, if you're running a property management company at any scale whatsoever, you gotta call Ravella. They have been an absolute game changer. Drink the Kool-Aid hard. So, one, they're built off, kind of accounting, financial reporting first, which most PMSs,
Mhm.
that's, kind of an afterthought at best. And that was our experience, with our previous, PMSs. So you build that correctly, and then, the rest of it is just kind of again logistics management, where you're seeing some of the newer PMSs now that are built kind of open source and they play well in the sandbox, with other companies, whereas some of those the giants that have been around, and I won't name names, but I will say one of them starts with A and ends with portfolio.
Yeah, I know you're talking about the giant. Yes, yeah.
Yes, and they go back and forth, but they when I used them in the last company, they did not play well in the sandbox at all together, with anybody. And I know they opened it up, and now they're doing some goofy stuff again here. Sounds like, for an example, when we brought on the private equity company in 2016, and they love spending money. And so we started the process of building a custom PMS off of Salesforce. And so they brought a company in to do kind of an audit and kind of figure out what was going on before we started the build. And one of the things that we learned through that is we were using 67 different softwares to run the business, and less than six of them talk to each other. Now that
That's
was
not good.
no, like
Yeah.
10 years ago now. And so, things have evolved again since, in that last 10 years. But Ravella has been phenomenal. They've thought their program through very, very well. And they're really, a kind of a single source of truth where you work in, one platform. And there are some stuff that integrate through Zaps or APIs or things right now, but
Hmm.
they're really building a holistic PMS that gives you full transparency. So, building with that, they've got just, and we're working with them pretty closely, hopefully providing some value to them as well, to from our experience on how to, build efficiencies too. So whether it's, the process of doing inspections. There's a handful of different inspections you can do, or we do a lot of turns because we kind of do full asset management and property management. We do a lot of stabilizing portfolios for sale or for refinancing or restructuring debt. And um, so it's interesting. And so it's one last thing I'll say on this is, I've learned, and being able to reflect on this a little bit now, is especially when you're trying to run multiple markets, but even in a single market, it's easy to get lazy. And maybe that's not the right word. And sometimes until you've challenged that enough, you just don't realize. But you look at, like a lot of these companies. I was on a webinar not too long ago, and one of the other people on there, had a like 1,200 door portfolio, which is a good sized portfolio, like in Colorado, and they had, I think it was like 40 employees. And I'm like, how do you make money? That's insane. But
Yeah.
people were jumping in going, man, that's awesome. How are you doing that? Like, how are you? But it's easy when you look at, we'll use inspectors because I brought that up as an example, right? And so you get to a certain point and you're going, okay, I need to hire a full-time inspector. And we did this, I've done this, right? And so now that person, yeah, they all they do is drive around and do, random routine, whatever inspections. So typically you buy them an inspection car, you're paying for the insurance on the car and upkeep and all of that, plus their salary, plus anything. And but that gets baked into your business, right? And so you go, okay,
Mhm.
all in with my car payments and everything, and call it 4 grand a month, whatever. But that's just part of your top line payroll expense, but you never really dig into that. So you don't realize, most people, don't go, okay, this person, this is costing me $4,000. Well, how many inspections am I doing over a month? Right. So when you start breaking that down, you realize how expensive it is to run a property management company every time you do an inspection. But you don't think about it because it's a baked cost. And in some cases, you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, my inspector's not busy. Like, at least I can justify their pay for the day or the week by doing that. But, it costs us money every time. We have national and local partnerships with inspection companies and photography companies and, vendors. And every time an inspection gets done, I get a bill for it, right? And, I can't always bill that back to my client. And so, right, if I'm making up $125 a month on a management fee and I do one inspection and it costs me $100, right? And that one,
Yeah.
on a micro level, you're like, man, I made $25 on this house this month. Whereas, you have this larger cost and you just don't really dig into the numbers. And so like having those things, it really started making me go, where can we be more efficient? Because it pings me every single time. So going, okay, how do we back up? How do we project what the issues are going to be? How do we get ahead of it? And building a lot of processes around that and just really making as efficient as possible. I joke my biggest superpower is my laziness. I'm inherently a lazy person, and so if I can find an easier, simpler way to do something, I'll spend way too much energy to figure that out, so I don't have to do redundant work or whatever again. So between the our experience with just having done so many different models, and we've been in 45 markets, you only realize, property management's property management. Every market and city and asset class has their nuances, but it's all pretty much the same if you decided
Mhm.
to be the same. And so we're really, really excited about our partnership with Ravella and lining up with, the processes and the efficiencies that we're creating. And we'll have that fully up and running here by the first of the year. And it will be the gold standard in property management. I try not to get too arrogant about too many things here, but
That is one.
yeah. And again, Ravella is, like I said, I've been in the space a long time, and it's refreshing to say the least. What they've done, what they built, what they're continuing to do, and everybody on their team is they've got a fantastic team there as well. So, um, anybody listening, tell them Donovan
Revella.
sent you.
Revella. So what as far as let's just jump a couple of things. One is, what do you think about AI in the future of property management?
I'm all in. I'm
You
all
all
in.
in? Okay.
We
And
are
and
building
and
a
then
lot of that right now. That's a
you're
big part
building.
of our
So what are some of the things you're building, and what are some of the things you hope to build?
a lot of it, and that's been the great thing. I mean, Ravella's big on it as well, and we've got some partners that are AI companies that are helping us build as well. So a lot of it is just like you know data entry. Um, that's kind of a big thing, right? So when we take over a portfolio and say it's got 200 doors, right? If you think about, and I won't go through that whole process, but you're taking it from, say, another property management company or wherever, right? You have to get 250 leases and deeds and rent roll reports. And then typically that comes over in, 250 different emails. And then you have to take that out and manually upload that information into your PMS. And one of the things we're working on is being able to to kind of scrape all of that data and be able to migrate it into Revella, and they're doing some really cool stuff around that too. So a lot of like the low hanging fruit stuff you're seeing, right? And AI is a big general term, right? I mean, there's a lot of different AIs, but that's a lot of very very easy low hanging fruit. And the other, we're into really getting into like the agentic AI side of it too. Having an AI leasing agent is coming up here for us. And that'll be here by the end of the year as well. But they I don't know if you've had conversations with AI agents on calls. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes, they're pretty good. And so there's some really good ones out there. And AI is not going to solve everything, right? Just like, a lot of the technology that we've seen, a lot of companies in the space are going, well, you know, this is the answer. This is the silver bullet. I don't believe that. And, again, I'm a relationship first person.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you see as a lot of tools to be able to give your people to be able to take a lot of that stuff off. We do have one employee. She's here in Phoenix, our director of property management. She's the best property manager. She's worked for me in my last company. And so it pains me when I see her doing data entry or doing things where I'm like, you are really good when you are resolving conflict with renters or, getting maintenance done or coordinated and like collecting back due rent or things like that. And that's what she needs to be doing. As bullish as I am on AI, I'm not I'm not to the point of replacing people totally yet, but there's certainly a lot of efficiencies I think that will come out of it. And you're seeing some good advancements. A lot of it you're seeing in in maintenance right now. So there's a couple of
Mm-hmm.
different maintenance coordination companies or platforms out there that are using it for communication, responding, or analyzing work orders or being able to provide data and things out of that too. So that's something that AI is really good at right now is kind of extracting and compiling and analyzing data sets too. So but yeah,
Yeah,
it's exciting. It's a new frontier for sure.
I definitely agree, and it's not going to take away people. People, right? You're right. It's gonna help with lead generation. It's gonna help with the operational efficiency, but you still need people to look at the data and
You may
everything
need
that
less
that
people,
provide. You may, yeah, less people, but you want to have probably want to hire a full-time person, but you still need that data looked at, the human element.
right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
still
So
need
I
the
would say
human
it's
there.
it's not my job to employ people. I don't worry about what the jobs numbers are. That's the government's job. We're not aligned on our goals there. So I I I I push back on hiring people. But when I do bring them on, I really want to be able to take really good care of them. And so when I have less mouths to feed here, we all eat more. The goal is to be able to take those resources and that money you would spend on five lower level people and be able to really support and hopefully change lives for those that are around and those who are bought into our mission too. So I'm excited for it. It's AI as a whole is going to repurpose a lot of jobs, and I know there's a lot of anxiety around that right now. But we're old enough to remember when the internet came in, and I was just a kid at that point too. But like thinking it's oh, here's the Jetsons now. Well, it certainly eliminated a lot of jobs, it
Yeah,
repurposed a lot, but look how many jobs it, created, and
it
influencer
did.
doesn't count in my opinion. But I think there's going to be we'll evolve, right? I mean, that's what society, civilization has done from industrial revolution and even before. It's
Hmm.
it's natural for this to happen, and for me, it's just trying to stay ahead of it and educate it as much as I can, and just feel like we can move with it as much as we can, and not get left behind.
That's true. Now, Donovan, as far as my rent door, what is you guys' goal within the next 6 to 12 months and longer? What is your guys' goals?
I don't really have a number of doors under management or, clients. And I'm really at this time, and obviously, the mission takes money and I need clients and things, to do that. But we're really looking to make an impact here. And so, the more clients we can bring on, the more, renters and we can help. Really even changing communities. So we do a lot with housing authorities and developing relationships there and being able to, bring in resources and partner up with, people who need those. So I'm looking to be one part of helping good people win and having, shelter is right a basic human need, providing a great place for people to live. We say your home is your haven here, so we want you to have a place that you can come home to, recharge, reset, and go back out in the world as the best version of yourself, whether that's as an employee, employer, student, teacher, whatever that is. And so we're looking, to ways to be able to provide, more value, more resources, to the people that we serve. We are looking to expand. Like I said, we're in 6 states right now. We'll probably be in another six in the next 6 months. Um, bring on some more clients here. So I'd love to see, if I'm throwing a number out, I'd like to see us at 5,000 doors by the end of the year, next year. So it'd be a X growth or whatever almost. But again, we've really spent the last year, and we've been turning away a lot of clients this year just because, especially when you get into this type of clients, like you only get one chance. If you screw up,
Hmm.
you're not getting a second chance, and it's a small world where they all know each other too. So making sure we get it right and we're able to then, turn around and, I'd love to be able to, help some good portfolio owners, stabilize their portfolios. And that just helps, entire communities. Probably not the answer you were looking for, a little bit rambling, but
Nah, you're fine. You want to hit 5,000 doors by the end of next year. No, that's a good goal. Now, Donovan, I like to end the podcast with a lightning round. So 6 questions, whatever come to your mind. Number one, if you weren't in the property management, what would you be doing right now?
my background is actually in building custom cars. I'd love to be back in the car space, although for me, I found it was a better hobby than a career. But yeah, I used to have a automotive upholstery company, so I would say something with cars again.
Something to call. Okay. Now, what's one thing tenants will be surprising to learn about you? I know you just mentioned cars.
Something tenants would be surprised to learn about me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually a nice guy. No. I don't know if it's tenant specific or anything, but I used to be the bat boy for the Minnesota Twins back in the day, so kind of a interesting fact about me, I guess.
That is an interesting fact. If your business had a theme song, what would it be?
I don't know if it's a business or me, but I always joke if I had a podcast, my opening music would be The Offspring, Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
Say that one more time. By
My
who?
opening song, if I had a podcast, would be The Offspring, Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
Okay. All right. I'm
I
gonna have
think
to
it'd be,
listen to that one.
yeah, it's,
I'm gonna listen to it. All right. No. For a coffee, energy drink, or early morning workout, what gets you going?
I don't work out like I should. So usually I got coffee here, energy drink here.
Both.
Yeah, get
Both.
started pretty
Okay.
early in the morning and work pretty late. So yeah, I usually drink about a pot of coffee, and then I don't always have energy drinks, but my wife stopped by and brought me this. So, but I probably drink more energy drinks than I should.
Okay. All right. Now, just back to what's your dream car to take to a weekend car show? I didn't even know that about the cars.
Ooh, I've got a long list of cars. I, um, I have a 1965 Lincoln Continental, the big boat four door with the rear suicide doors. So that would be, I don't know if that car will ever get finished. Um, but I would love to have another 65 Lincoln. I've also been into station wagons lately, so like a 1960 Chevrolet Brookwood wagon, I think would be cool. Yeah, I'm an old car guy, classic car guy.
Yes, that's nice. That's nice. Now, last one, if your Tyler ran your company for a day, what would change first?
If what's
If your toddler ran your company today for a day, one day, what would change first?
if my toddler ran it?
Yeah, for one day.
Oh, I think I'd have a lot more people calling in wanting to talk about things because my kid's pretty funny. I mean, I'm biased, but he makes my day when I talk to him. He dropped lunch off too, and he just turned 3. That's where I was this weekend, right? It was
Yeah.
his 3rd birthday party. So he's a jolly, funny, very, very kind kid. So I think I'd have an overflow of people trying to call in and talk to Lane. Other than that, the wheels would fall off
Do
by lunchtime, nap time here, and
Then you'll be back at it,
yeah,
putting the
but
wheels back on.
yeah, I'm pretty sure most people would prefer to talk to my toddler than me.
All right, good deal, Donovan. And that's a wrap, and that wraps up another insightful episode of the Truth Podcast. My sincere thanks to Donovan Reese for sharing his incredible journey and the innovative vision behind MyRentDoor. It's truly inspiring to see how a focus on empathy, smart partnership, and a clear mission can redefine the entire industry. We've learned about the power of a zero vacant mission, the efficiency of a remote first model, and the importance of aligning values with your business strategy. Now, if you're an intentional investor or part of a fund looking for a property management partner that prioritizes relationship and results, I encourage you to explore MyRentDoor. Donovan, thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom and vision. Now, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the Truly Podcast for more conversations at the forefront of real estate and technology. Until next time, keep growing and innovating.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Donovan. You was great. Enjoyed you. Quick question. I know you gave an hour of your time, and I like to just take some time. Spend an hour. Take an hour of my time to see if we can partner with you or see what Revella do for you, and see if we can help you out on anything further with your company and your vision.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about what you guys are doing when you're not hosting a podcast.
Okay. All right. Let's set up another time to meet. Will this time next week work on a Wednesday?
It should the same what noon next Wednesday the 20.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, I'll send you a meeting invite for the 29th, same time. And then, yeah, we can talk about what my company does and then see what vision you guys have and see if we can help, see what Revella does and see if you just need anything on the operational side, anything like that. Okay.
That sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. Talk to you next week,
All right.
Donovan. Have a good
Thanks
one.
so
Okay.
much.
All right.
Appreciate your
Thanks.
time.
All right. Thanks.